What's going on, everybody? Hope everybody's doing well today. So check this out. I wanted to do a video on how I got into the trucking business, because I had a few guys ask me that, like, Bino, how did you get into this? You know, how did you buy your first truck? What were the requirements, and so on and so forth. So I figured, let me just do a video, and hopefully this will help. So I got my CDL young. Okay, I was 20 years old when I got my CDL. I went to school and got my commercial license for driving. I believe I was 20 years old. I didn't know what to do with myself. I didn't know if I wanted to go to college. I didn't know, you know, so I said, let me just get my CDL. A friend of mine was getting his at the time, and he convinced me to get mine. So I got mine, and you know, it was great. It was cool. I got a good job. I was getting good money. For those who are just graduating high school and you are at least 18 years old and you don't know what to do with yourself, I recommend getting your CDL. Okay. Why? Because you can always use that as your backup and get paid good money. All right? At the time, I wasn't even thinking about barbering. I honestly wasn't even thinking about barbering. But I was shaping my friends up. So if you want to count that as me cutting, I don't know, I guess. I was shaping myself up, I was shaping my boys up. And anyway, so I got my CDL, I was driving, I was making decent money, and what happened was I did something stupid. Okay, I did something stupid. I'm not gonna go in detail on it, but I'll let you use your imagination. I got my license suspended. I did something stupid, and I got my license suspended at the time. You know, young and dumb, right? So I said, damn, I gotta do something now. I gotta do something. And a friend of mine convinced me to start cutting hair, because I was really good at shaping people up. So that's how I got into barbering. And then you guys should know the story from there. I went all in with barbering. I went to school, got my barber license, and I didn't think after all these years that I would ever have to use my CDL again. I thought I was going to be cutting hair in the shop forever, honestly. Like, you know, but thank God I did, man. Thank God I did, man, because I'm in a way better situation now. Okay, let's just put it that way. I'll go into detail on another video as far as why I sold the shop and I got out the barbering. You know, I still cut hair, but I'm not in the barber shop anymore. I'm not public anymore. I'm private now, and I love it. And I love it. Trust me. Anyway, so how'd I buy my truck? So to buy a truck, it's almost as if it's the same as buying a car. You have to have good credit. All right. I believe the minimum score was like a 640. I believe. I could be wrong on that. Don't quote me on that. But your credit has to be good enough to get a loan. Okay. I didn't pay cash. I didn't have that type of money. But I put 20% down payment. Okay. Some places are different. You need to. Okay. First of all, let me rewind. Before you purchase a truck, you need to do your research on what truck you want to buy. Okay. And take your time with this. Don't just jump out and look at it just because a truck looks nice and, you know, the price is somewhat decent, it's clean. You might be jumping into a nightmare, okay? You have to do your research. You have to do your research. I'm telling you, I'm very calculated. I don't just make a move, okay? I don't do that. I always plan it out. I always get a piece of paper. I always write down the pros and cons, and it's like playing chess. So before I pulled the trigger on my truck, I test drove probably 10 trucks or more, probably. I went to the dealer. I knew what engine I wanted. I knew what cab I wanted. I knew all the specs that I wanted in a truck. I already had it written down. Okay. What engine did I want? What engine was it? It was a Detroit DD15 engine. When I did my research, I found that Detroit engines are the best for for owner operators that are just getting into this. Why? Because Detroit engines are easy to work on. It's almost like a Honda engine, right? You can go almost anywhere and someone can work on a Honda engine, right? But if you got like a Lexus or Mercedes or a high-end car, not everyone can work on that car. So it's almost like that, right? I wanted an engine that was easy to work on, that I could work on, and that would last. You know, Detroit engines have a good reputation. So before you buy your truck, you need to do your homework on what specs do you want. All right? I didn't need a sleeper. I got a day cab. I don't drive over the road. Okay? I'm local. I'm home every day. So I don't need this big sleeper. All right? So that was checked. All right, I need a day cab, Detroit engine, okay? Double axle, because you have single axle, you have double axle trucks. And I wanted a stick shift. I didn't want an automatic. I like stick. This is what I'm used to. I think they're the best. All the trucks that's coming out now are automatic. Which is cool, whatever, but I like stick. So again, once you know what truck you want, now you go searching, you do price checks. All right, you compare prices. Go drive the truck. How much mileage are you willing to accept? All right, I wanted the lowest mileage possible. I bought my truck, it had 280,000 miles on it. All right, that might sound like a lot to a lot of people, but that's actually not a lot of miles for a truck. All right, that's low for a truck. Trucks go up to 1 million miles. You can get 1 million miles out of a truck if you take care of it. Okay, so to me, this was the perfect truck for me, and I got it at a great deal. I think I put down 20%. The lender that I went through required me to have a contract of who I was going to work for. Okay, so that it all depends on what lender you use. I went through Northland Bank, or Northland Group, I think it's called, and they were pretty cool. I pay a lot of interest. I mean, my interest rate wasn't the best. Okay, but it is what it is. I didn't have X amount to put down, so they kind of worked the number in with how much money do you have to put down. My credit score wasn't the greatest, but it was good enough. Okay, I'm just being honest. Like, my credit score was good enough. I had about 10,000 to put down on the truck, to get insurance, tax, all that stuff. So Northland required me to have at least a promise of employment. They're not going to just sell you a truck. Okay, well, like I said, the people I went through, they don't just sell you a truck. You have to have a promise of employment. They need to know, okay, if we sell this guy this truck, he at least has a place where he's going to get broke. Like they don't want you to miss out on payments. Okay? They don't want you to say, oh man, well, I bought this truck and I can't find work. So, they ain't trying to hear that. So again, one of the requirements, they wanted a promise of employment. So at the time, I had someone that I was going to run with. That's another thing. Like, you need to know, okay, if I'm going to buy my truck, where am I going to run? Who am I going to run for? Am I going to get my own authority, or am I going to lease on to somebody? Okay, I was going to get my authority, I was going to get my authority. I was this close. But I decided to lease on to somebody, at least until I got my feet wet, and then, boom, I'll get my authority, right? At least that's what I was thinking. And I leased on to a company called Land, Land. They did containers from rail yards. You know, the big containers that come off ships and stuff like that. I didn't like that. I hated it. I could not stand it. The money was decent, okay? The money was decent, but I could not stand the work. I couldn't stand it. I couldn't wait to get out of there. I like flatbeds, okay? So right now I'm doing flatbedding. I haul steel, all right? I haul steel coils, which is easy for me. It's easy on, easy off, right? So from Land, I leased on to Mawson & Mawson, which is a great company, great company. I'm still here to this day. So that should speak volumes right there. You know, I make good money. I'm free. I'm in a good situation. All right, I'm in a good situation. I'm not going to go too deep on that, but I'm in a good situation. But basically, that's how I got into the trucking business. I always had my CDO. All right, always had my CDO. And when I had my shop going, I was already thinking of buying a truck even when I had my shop. I was thinking, let me buy a truck, I can get that rolling. I got the shop going. But what did it for me, honestly, what really did it for me was COVID. COVID was the icing on the cake, man. Honestly, it was all I needed to see. But anyway, I'll get into that in another video. But if you guys have any more questions on how I got into the trucking business, let me know in the comments, all right? I'll answer them, truthfully, all right? I hope this helps. Thank you for watching. God bless you. Peace.